The first ones are solving quadratics. They all have x squareds in them. But you don't need to use the quadratic formula. You could, but it's a lot easier just to solve them normally because they don't have any plain x's in it. So this one, all you got to do to get the x by itself is do what?
Square root.
Square root. Now on these, you got to remember, it's not just 9, it's also
-9.
-9. You got to put both of them on these because they're quadratics. What that means is if there was a graph, it would cross at -9 and +9. That's why you got to put them both. So this one, remember, it's just solving equations. You do PEMDAS backwards. So you do add and subtract first, then multiply and divide second, and then exponents in parentheses last. So here you've got to add 6 first to get the x by itself. Then you got to divide by 3. And then lastly, you do exponents. So to get rid of a squared, you square root it. And it's not just 3, it's plus or minus 3. So number 2 is done the same way. You get the x by itself.
27 divided by 3.
Yep. Add 6, divide by 3, and then square root.
Oh, okay.
So here your 3 steps will be add 8, divide by 6, and then square root. Because you just do the opposite. And you do PEMDAS backwards. So that is 30.
Once you add 8.
Oh, add 8, yep. 54. And then you divide by 6, and you get 9 again. So then you square root, and it's plus or minus 3. Simplifying radicals. It's not simplified if any of the perfect squares go into it. Square root of 4, square root of 9, square root of 16, and so on. 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4.
I'm so excited to do the just now.
That's good.
That's good.
So, what perfect square goes into 50? 25. 25 times 2. So you can split it up into the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. You don't have to put the perfect square first, it's just easier if you do. So remember, one of these numbers has to be a perfect square.
25.
So then the square root of 25 just makes 5 square roots of 2. You know, 10 times 5 makes 50 also, but that doesn't do you any good because neither one of these is a perfect square. So you got to have one number a perfect square. When it's a fraction, first of all, you could see, does 1/9 reduce?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, is it 9?
So you split it up. You don't have to write it down. You could just do it in your head, but I'm just showing you. If it's all under the square root, you can split it up into like that. So square root of 1 is?
1.
Square root of 9 is?
3.
So it's 1/3. Huh?
No.
No, because the square root of 1 is 1, because 1 times 1 is 1.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I knew that.
So 108, it's not a perfect square. So you got to find one of these that goes into it. 16.
Just kidding, I have no idea.
I think 36 times 3.
I'm trying not.
Is it?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So remember, you want to try and get the biggest one because then it saves you steps of reducing. Otherwise, you'd have to cut it down again and again.
36 more.
So square root of 36 is 6. So the answer is 6 square roots of 3. Fractions. This will reduce, although you wouldn't have to. They're also perfect squares. Either way you do it, you'd end up with the same answer. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 81 is 9. But remember, you got to simplify it all the way. 3/9 is 1/3. If you would have simplified this right away, it would have been 1/9. cause 9 goes into itself once and into 81 9. So it's the same as this one.
So if you have 1/9, would that correct?
No, cause then I just simplified this and the square root's still there, and then you'd have to,
I got you.
then they end up being the same there. So on this one, 16 is a perfect square, but you could reduce this right away. What can you divide them both by?
4.
4. So it'd be the square root of 3 over the square root of 4, right? 3/4. Square root of 3 won't simplify. What's the square root of 4?
2.
2. And now for number 9, what perfect square goes into 40?
4.
4 times 10. 9 doesn't, 16 doesn't, and then we're over halfway. So we would split this up into square root of 4 times the square root of 10, and it's still over 14. Square root of 4 is 2.
5. No.
Now it's still not quite simplified.
So just, can you do it 5 10? Or can you take 2 divided by 14?
Right. You can't simplify if something's under a square root and something's not, but neither of these are. So that would turn to 1, and this would turn to 7, so you would just write that as square root of 10 over 7.
Can you have that one?
You could have the 1, but technically, if you simplified it, you wouldn't put it there. But I wouldn't count it wrong if you had it there.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you guys put the iPad away? So, sketching.
Date. Made.
Anything with the quadratics, if you're, anything to do with graphing, if you're sketching it, finding the vertex, finding a maximum or minimum, what do you gotta always start off with?
What?
What do you start with?
0.
Negative b over
Negative b over 2a. So remember, the a is the number in front of the x, the b is the number, or in front of the x squared, b is in front of the x.
0.
So there is no x, which means b is 0. Doesn't matter what that is, it would be 2, and so it's 0 over 2 is 0.
Wait, what?
If b is 0, then x is going to be 0. So that means plug 0 in here to find what y is.
Negative 4.
Negative 4. So that's your vertex. So all we need is 1 or 2 more points to see how wide it is. 1 is easy to put in. 1 squared minus 4 is negative 3. So 1 over 3 down, flip it over. There we got an idea. You wouldn't have to, but 2 is easy to put in. 2 squared is 4, minus 4 is 0. So 2, 0, and then flip it over. And there you can see better that it's like this. Now don't forget this.
They move the vertex.
Yeah, so this is the point 0, negative 4.
Negative b.
So now here, A is a negative 1, and B is a negative 6.
So the positive 6 over negative 2.
Negative 2. Negative 6 makes positive 6, and then 2 times A is negative 2, so that's negative 3. Then we got to plug that in here.
Ow.
So, remember when you square negative 3, that's going to turn to positive 9, but the negative still stays out in front. So this is negative 9 minus 6 times negative 3 is negative 18, which is 9.
How do you get named? But how is? Oh, never mind. That's named.
Now to make sure you do it right on the calculator, if you got negative numbers here, just plug it in exactly the same way, but put parentheses around the number you're plugging in. So you could put a negative sign, and then you could put parentheses negative 3 squared minus 6 parentheses negative 3. And it would give you the correct answer. So since this is negative 3 and 9,
Let's go threes.
Go by threes. So just make sure you label the X and the Y. You don't need to label all of them, you just need to put a 3 there and a 3 there to show that it goes by threes. So -3 up 9 is right there. It will open down because it's negative. So what's a real easy one to put in?
0.
0. -0 squared minus 6 times 0 is 0. Flip it over, and they're far enough apart we can see it goes like that. And then again, remember, label the vertex, -3, 9. You got it? So here, A is 1, B is 4. So -4 over 2 times 1 is 2, so that is -2. So then when you put -2 in here, again, if you're using a calculator, just make sure if it is negative, put parentheses around it. -2 squared is 4, plus 4 times -2 is -8, plus 1 is -3. So left 2, down 3 is the vertex. Now, again, 0 is 2 away, but 0 is an easy one to plug in. 0 squared plus 4 times 0 plus 1 is 1. So 0 over 1 up, and then you gotta flip that over. You know, like this is the vertex, so that's the middle of it. It's 1, 2, 3, so you go 1, 2, 3 right there. And there we can see pretty good how it goes.
0 over 1 up.
You're 0, and you're supposed to go up.
Oh, I went 1 over. Sorry, it's 0, 1.
So on the test, are we supposed to put like the dotted line in between?
You don't have to unless it helps you. And then again, remember, label the vertex, -2, -3. So this one, A is 2, B is -1. So -B over 2A is 1 over 4. 1/4. So, when I plug 1/4 in for X, again, you could just make this a decimal if you don't have a fraction calculator, 0.25.
So when you have like, on like the last problem, and like you add like a -2, are you supposed to put parentheses, like -2?
Yeah.
And then hit the square button?
Yep. If it's a negative, keep the parentheses. If it's not, you don't need to worry about the parentheses. So this one is -1.125. So at a 1/4 over, there's a half, there's a 1/4, you go down a little over 1. So like right about there. So now 0 I could plug in, but it's so close to that axis of symmetry, it's not going to tell us much.
1.
So yeah, 1 is a little further away. Put 1 in. 2 times 1 squared is 2. Take away 1 is 0. So 1 over 0 up. Now when you flip this over, this is only 3/4 away from the axis of symmetry.
So you have to go over.
So right there would be 3/4 away. Because that's 1/4 plus a half is 3/4. So it'd be like that. And then label the vertex, 1/4 or 0.25, whatever you want to put, and -1.125, which is -1 1/8. Now, sketching the inequality is exactly the same as this. It's just you're gonna have to shade the inside or the outside. And this will be a dotted parabola, because it's not equal to, and this one will just be solid like that, because it is equal to.
And if it's less than,
Less than, you go down from the vertex and shade there, and greater than, you go up from the vertex and shade there. So here, negative b over 2a is 6 over 2 times 1 is 2. So that's 3. So when I put 3 in there, that'd be 9 minus 18 plus 5 is negative 4. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the vertex. So here's the axis. You want to pick a number close to that. 2 is close, but 1 is still pretty close, and 1's easy to work with. So I'd put 1 in. Again, you don't have to. You could put 0 in, or 1, or 2. But if I put 1 in, it would be 1 minus 6 plus 5 is 0. So then you flip it over, that's 2 away from this line, so you go 2 over here, and that's enough for us to sketch it. Now you gotta remember this, dotted. And then you gotta shade, either inside it or outside it. Y is less than, so if you go to the vertex, less than is down from there, which puts you outside of it. So you would shade the outside.
You don't have to write the vertex.
Nope, not this one. But if you want to, you can. So for here, negative b over 2a, b is a negative 2, so that'd be 2. A is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. So then plug 1 in for the x's. 1 squared is 1, take away 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3 is 2, right? Yep. So 1 over 2 up. This one will open up. So an easy one to put in is 0. That'd be 0, that'd be 0, plus 3 is 3. So 0 over 3 up, flip it over. And this would be a solid line because it has the equal. And then you got a shade
On the outside.
on the outside. Y is less than, so you go to the vertex, less would be below, so you would shade outside.
What time is it?
Now, these last problems, these two, and these two, they're all worded differently, but they're all doing the same thing. X-intercepts means solve it. Use the quadratic formula to solve. Roots is just another name for solution. So the reason why they call it x-intercepts is where does it intercept the x-axis. So to find the roots, just is there and there. X equals 2 and 4. So you just need to know that those are the roots or the solutions by looking at the graph. So for this one, this goes by 2's, so x would equal 2, and this would be negative 5.
No.
Then the quadratic formula, that will be given to you.
Negative b plus 1 b to the square root of negative b minus 4ac all over 2a.
All right.
Alright.
So
Suck it, Joe.
this one and this one are done the same way, they're just worded differently. X-intercepts is the solution. So for these four, you use these. So remember, They're all written in order for you. You're not gonna have to move anything. A is the number in front of x squared. B is the number in front of x. C is the number without an x. So when you plug it in, be negative 10 plus or minus b squared is 100 minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So this turns out to be 4. Square root of 4. 100 minus 4 times 1 times 24. 4 times 1 times 24 is 96. So 100 minus 96 is 4, which is 2. Again, if you don't simplify it, you're still using a calculator, so you could just punch it in that way. But remember now, your two answers are negative 10 plus 2 all over 2 times a, I forgot to put, is just 2. And negative 10 minus all this, which is 2, all over 2. So when you do this on the calc, remember to press equals after you figure out this top part. So negative 10 plus 2, press equals, because it's all divided by 2. And that's negative 4. Negative 10 minus 2 is negative 12, divided by 6 is negative, or 2 is negative 6. So for this one, A is 1, B is negative 2, and C is negative 15. So negative B changes that to a 2, because it's a negative. Plus or minus B squared, just do it in your head, 4, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A is 2. So you could just punch it in like this, but you would have to put parentheses around the whole top to make sure it's all divided by 2.
Negative 15.
So the easiest thing to do is just to figure out the inside.
0.
And you get 64. 4 minus 4 times 1 times negative 15 is 64, which is 8.
I don't have a calculator, that's fine.
So 2 plus 8 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. 2 minus 8 is negative 6, divided by 2 is negative 3. Okay, then these, A is 1, B is negative 3, C is 2. Again, even though it says find x-intercepts, that is still the solution, that's the same thing. So negative b plus or minus b squared is 9 minus 4 times a.
Isn't this the same way as the?
Yep. So finding x-intercepts is the same thing as solving it.
Isn't
B
B
is
positive?
negative 3.
Oh.
B is positive.
Right, b is a negative 3, there you go.
Go.
Minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. 9 minus 4 times 1 times 2 is 1. Because 4 times 1 times 2 is 8, 9 minus 8 is 1. And the square root of 1 is 1. So 3 plus 1 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1.
Whatever they do, these 1 and the square root is the same.
Square root of 1 is 1. If you do that on the calculator, because 1 times 1 is.
A, B, C.
So here, A is negative 2, B is 4, C is negative 1. So, negative B plus or minus B squared is 16 minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A is negative 4. So this inside here is 8, which is not a perfect square. So your two answers are -4 plus the square root of 8 divided by -4, and -4 minus the square root of 8 divided by -4. So it doesn't say here, but remember we round to 2 decimals on these. So this is 0.29 for the first one.
No, you're skipping.
And this is 1.71.
Was that 1.71?
Yep.
You used that, aren't you?
If you drop your ball.
Now this one's an extra credit, but does anyone remember the formula for dropping a ball?
Like negative h something. Oh, h equals.
What's gravity?
2.5.
How fast does something fall?
16.
16, negative 16 feet per second, so that's times the time squared. And then do you remember what?
This is my picture clip, right?
Wait, what was that again?
Plus s, which is the initial height.
Okay.
So if you drop a ball from a set of bleachers that's 144 feet above the ground, that's s. How long will it take to hit the ground? So what's the height when it hits the ground?
0.
0. So it's 0 equals negative 16 t squared plus 144. And then you just got to solve for t because they're not looking for time.
Add.
So you minus 144. Divide by negative 16 and then square root. I think it's 3. 144 divided by 16 is 9, and then when you square 9, you get 3.
Do you want me to stop it?
Yes. Oh, yeah.